Hello, everyone. This is my third and final author's chat of the week. We kind of do them pretty much daily since Sunday. Scheduling, purely. But with that said, how is everybody's day going? I'll be keeping my eye out for my co-host to see when he joins in. But yeah, we'll be talking about books, writing, publishing, and everything in between in just a little bit. So that'll be fun. I'm excited. Anywho, hey, how are you? For those who don't know me, I am an author of various epic fantasy series, from young adult, new adult, to adult literature, including Viking style dark fantasy, war shifter based fantasy, and a kind of a fun portal fantasy kind of style. We'll be going into some of that a little later. Keep my eye out. Cross some fingers. I don't have my time wrong. I have my timer set, and I'm pretty sure 6. Always trying to arrange timing with other authors is very interesting, just because when I want to make sure everybody knows what time zone we're in, so we shall see. Hopefully I got it right. If not, he'll be joining us an hour into this. But yeah, so see him right here. Hello.
There we go. All right.
How are you?
Doing okay. It's been a very busy day so far, so all right.
Well, thank you then for joining this afternoon or evening. I don't know exactly what time zone you're in, so I don't know where you are in the world, but it's kind of heading toward evening for me.
Yeah, mountain time. So it's still bright and sunny, yeah. So we're good.
Okay, perfect.
California.
Perfect.
All right. There you go.
Yeah, and so kind of how I do these, pretty casual. I'll let you introduce yourself, what you write, do your elevator pitch if you want to, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, great. So I'm Brady Hunsaker. I write YA fantasy. I've been writing since I was like 11 years old. I was all motivated to be better than some other kid who was also writing books, and so that was my motivation to get into it. And I only just barely finally released my first book back in I guess 2 months ago now, or like a month and a half ago. So yeah, so just barely started publishing, and yeah, I've probably written several books at this point, but that's my first time publishing something. And my background with that is that my goal when I set out writing is I wanted to create content that is easily consumable by a lot of people, but also I wanted people to be able to relate to the characters. And I wanted a dual protagonist book because I've been hearing a lot lately that like there aren't a lot of books for boys and girls, and a lot of it is just like, for one of them specifically. And I was like, you know what, I want anybody to be able to read my book and feel like it fits them well and that they can enjoy it. So that's part of my goal. So I try to write something that always has dual POV and has high stakes and lots of interesting stuff going on, and very unique settings. I always like to have some unique idea so it seems like a refreshing read to somebody. And then with always a romantic subplot. I can't avoid it. So yeah.
Well, here's the thing, is even if you don't qualify yourself as a romance writer, having some level of romance is just what reality is. For some characters somewhere, there's going to be, even in like some of the darker, adult, grittier stuff like Game of Thrones, even some of the characters, they may crush on each other or whatnot. There is some level of romance and angst and everything because like I said, it's part of reality.
Yeah, especially if you're a 16 or 17-year-old. I mean, let's be real.
Oh yeah. And that's what I was going to ask was like, I thought you mentioned, but maybe you didn't. Your first book is YA, correct?
Yep.
Okay, yes. And so that's why then your characters would be around 16, 17, maybe 18.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, they're and the advice is that if you're doing YA, your character should be 16 years old, but I'm still kind of like, I know some 16-year-olds and there's some pretty cool ones, but for the most part, they still just have such interesting ideas about things that I wanted someone to be a little bit more, I guess, mature.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of like a goal of mine is I want mature characters. Yeah. So
Well, and I think that's good point because I've read a lot of books that are shelved as young adult, but the characters start at 17 and then go up, which I get, yes, you could taper them down to young adult, but then there's that new adult bracket where, is 18 and up. So you could do, still have some younger characters in like a new adult, but then be able to talk about a little more of a mature content or have characters rationalize a little bit more than, I mean, let's be real. When you were a teenager, your thought processes probably not the same as when you got a little older.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Which is funny because like the way I think about it is like, um, I think people are always as smart as they're ever going to be. Kind
Hmm.
of. I mean, you can do some things to kind of like adjust your intellect, but I think people just, you can have a teenager who's a very smart person, but they just
Oh
have
yeah.
less experience, right? Whereas that same person, when they're older, they can apply that intelligence a lot better, and that's when it becomes wisdom, right?
Hmm.
So I think you can have a very smart person. They're gonna, as a 17 or 16-year-old, they're gonna do things that are, less intuitive, probably, or they lack a little bit of the wisdom to make more sense out of the decisions they make.
Yeah. And so with your first book, is this going to be part of a series or is this like a standalone for your first book?
Yeah, so it's a series. I've already got. I'm probably 25% of the way done with the second book, and then I've done a prequel for it. So I have a prequel out that's for free right now as well. So
Very
anybody
interesting.
can go and get my prequel for free if they want. It's part of that too. So
And I love that. I love having,
yeah.
I think a lot of readers appreciate having some kind of taste of what the style of the author will be or, the way they write and what they're presenting to the world. And so having things like either a prequel that's for free or short stories, again, they may not even connect necessarily directly to the books you're releasing, but again, it's a taste for a reader to be like, here's your sample, hopefully you like my work, and then here's the stuff you can buy after that.
Right. Yeah, that's the idea. So yeah, and that's usually what they do is indies is you just have to give something away for free so that people have a reason to pick you up because they're not going to see your stuff in a bookstore usually. So you have to do other things. Yeah.
So for you with your publishing, are you distributing, blah, blah, blah. It's been a long day for me. Are you wide? So you're in Barnes& and Noble, all that. Are you just exclusive through Zon or where can people find your debut book?
Yeah, so I have it it's wide and it's through Amazon. So I did kind of a dual
Oh, I like that.
publishing approach with it. It's on KU as well, so like digitally you can find it on there. But yeah, so
Well, how
that
do
was
you
the
like
easiest
your
way.
Well, how do you like your publishing experience so far? Because you're brand new, but you've been on this platform talking up your book for a while. Because if I remember correctly, I remember seeing some of your, posts about your upcoming work. And so I know you got a lot of interest that way. So how's your whole experience for your first time? Was it
Hmm. I
stressful?
mean,
It was stressful for me.
it is, yeah. And there's a lot of mistakes I made, honestly.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
I wouldn't even I mean I would have thought like, oh, I'm doing this is the right thing to do, right? But honestly, there was a lot of mistakes, especially like I didn't realize because I had so many paperback orders. Like a lot of people purchased my paperback book, but I didn't realize that the commission rate was so different. For example, like from Amazon to Ingram Spark, which is the other one I used, the commission difference was like if I sold 350 like paperbacks or something, and it's only like $1.50 commission through Ingram Spark, and then Amazon pays out like $4.20 for each one. So I was like, wow, that's quite a bit of difference. So it's like for me that equates to being like it was like what $600, $700 difference.
yeah.
So yeah, a little bit of a change there, but it's okay. I was like, I want to get positive, but again, I figured that I would just screw some stuff up with the first one anyway, and I mean that's okay. So for me, it's just part of learning that whole thing and getting used to it. So
And
I'm okay with it.
And I am not a person who's wide at the moment. I do think I've been saying this for people who've been listening to these before. I've said this regularly that next year, I think I will take my print versions and move them to probably Ingram Sparks, knowing that, yes, you're going to make a smaller return, but it does allow me to reach a wider audience potentially, because there are definitely people who won't buy through Zon, or won't find you unless your distribution is a little wide. So it's a give and take. Though the nice thing about being indie is we have that opportunity. We can talk to people through like Medium and social platform like this and say, hey, here's the educational part. If you want to support me and give me the best cut, here are the options in what order, and explain why. And just because it's hard. It is hard when people fathom and look at a $15 book and you're like, yeah, I make $1. You know,
Right?
it's something like
It's
that. And
crazy.
people's jaws drop. I'm like, yeah, because we don't make a lot.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? So even if you sell like 10,000 copies of your book, it's like that doesn't even cover nearly enough of the expenses of my life, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of funny. So, and here I am, I think I barely sold a little over 400 books, right? So it's
But
still, you grow. Yeah.
you grow, and the fact that, again, you're learning and talking to your readers going forward, you can always tell them, saying, if you're comfortable with buying through Zon, it does give me the better cut. So if you want to go get your paperback through Zon, that'll help me a little. And be honest with them. I think people who genuinely like you and your work want to support you the best way they can, and so that may help you for book 2 to make more sales the way it benefits you going forward. Again, I haven't gone wide yet. I've only have my experience through Zon at the moment, and give or take. But
Yeah. I was like,
but
sorry.
no worries, no worries. Everybody, that's the thing. Is you have to understand, a lot of indies, we are real people. Actually, not a lot. All of us are real people. So, background noises, it happens. But what I was going to say something or ask you something. I will come back to me. It will come back to me in a moment. Oh, the fact that, and I know everybody's journey is so different, but the fact that your first book, and you've only been out a couple months, has 400 sales. It may not seem a lot to you, but that's still an achievement, because I will admit, the first time I released a book, I did not do anything right, and it took me years before I could figure out, oh yeah, I have to market myself.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a
So
lot of
you're
different
ahead
ways
of
to
the
do
game.
it. Yeah, and here's the thing is like you have to set up, I think, establish a good set of goals for what you're
Mhm.
trying to do. So if I'm publishing a book with the objective to just sell as many copies as possible, I guess that's okay. That's one objective. But for me, it's I want to find people who enjoy my book.
Yeah,
Like I want my book to get in the hands of people who like it, right? That's the objective. So part of it is like, well, let's make sure that I market it in a way that appeals to people who would enjoy that kind of story. So the way that you do that kind of thing is you just think, well, what are the emotions that the characters experience during the story, or how's someone going to feel when they're reading that book, right? And then if you're doing some kind of marketing, you want to convey a scene or something that has that type of emotion in it, so that when someone who wants to experience that experiences that emotion during that little clip that they get, then I mean they can expect that in the story, and that's why they would go pick it up and read it, right?
oh
So
yeah,
it's kind of like connecting to that side of it for people and saying, yeah, if this is how you connect with media of some kind, then that's what I'll generate. And so marketing becomes more targeted for kind of like an emotional experience for the reader.
I like that. I like that, because I've heard, I read a book, and it was talking about, for the author side, of how to better market your book, because, you're thinking of like the sweeping tropes and genres, and sometimes you forget that sometimes some of these little more personal microcosm experiences really can relate to different readers and may be a reason why someone really enjoys your book. And so being able to express, hey, we cover this stuff too, is
Mhm.
a great way to market yourself. But going back to your book, you were saying you do dual POVs, and I think that's fantastic. So, can you let us know a little bit about what your characters are like, your two, that we get to see through their
Oh yeah.
eyes?
So, and this was funny too, because I was like, how do I want to convey people? Because one of my other objectives was like, I want people to be the characters in the story. I want them to be very realistic and to have like kind of real problems. And a lot of times you see, especially the way that a male character is conveyed, they're either, I feel like they just fall into like the same three tropes every time. where it's like he's like a goofball. He's like some funny guy, kind of weird, kind of like if you watch the Dungeons and Dragons movie,
Not yet,
it's
but
like
it is on
that
my
guy.
tour.
There's always that guy,
Yep.
or there's like the big gruff teddy bear guy, or he's like the all powerful dude, and he has no time for anybody, and the Beauty and the Beast kind of guy. You got like those are like the three kinds of guys I feel like there are, and I'm like, okay, well, can we have some middle ground? Can we have like just some like real dude who just is like, yeah, I'll do some stuff. I'll work through problems and stuff like that. So anyway, that's like what I wanted to do for my character, where he's I mean, he doesn't have like mental illness, but he deals with like he's got like family abuse and stuff like that in his life, but he's very motivated by anger, pretty much, right? And like he's got a lot of expectation and wants to resolve things. It's not a revenge story at all, but it kind of has that vibe where instead of needing to do that or it being some kind of revenge story, it's like more of about overcoming bitterness and resentment and things like that can happen in life. And so it's more about like that kind of journey through that as opposed to like overcoming some great obstacle type thing. So it's very much character driven in that sense. So that's the male character. But he's the scorned prince. Like his mom hates him, and she's gonna have him killed in a few days. Is the idea, because it's his fault. His dad died. Right. That's kind of the premise. And so he's trying to prove himself back to his mom. Is the idea, and that's kind of like the premise. Is like, I'm gonna prove myself to my mom so she doesn't have me killed, and whatever. But that's kind of like the premise for it. So it's him trying to his way of proving himself to her is to like hunt down a shaman assassin. Okay. And then the other character, she is a shaman, and there's these two factions that exist in this book, right? You got the ring dwellers and you got the shamans, and the ring dwellers don't have any magic, but the shamans do. And the ring dwellers don't like the shamans because they blame them for these magical storms that kind of ravage the planet, basically.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So they don't like them, but there's this rebel shaman girl, and her parents were killed by Migo's mom, and instead of being like a vengeful kind of person, she's out to she wants to find peace. She's like, okay, we don't want any more orphans, right? Like we want to solve that problem. So she's out to kind of resolve all that, and then comes to discover that she has magical abilities, and it's extremely destructive, like very, very powerful magic. And she's a pacifist, and so she's like, okay, I've got this power that kind of conflicts with my ideals, basically. And so it's kind of like, how do you find peace, or how do you establish something that's of greater value? And so I don't know. I always like to present these kind of moral dilemmas with the characters, but that's who they are. And ultimately, there is destruction impending, of course, and the only way to resolve it is if these two people can kind of resolve things together as well. And that's the only way that they'll be able to find peace, right? Where he's out to hunt her and kill her to prove himself to his mom, and she's just trying to stop the war altogether, right? So, but finds that she has the power to do something a little different.
Yeah, and here's some things I just want to pause and say, because I always like to say hi to people commenting. One who just recently popped up. I hope you enjoy Asar's Claws. That's really nice. And also Matt, who was mentioning about one of my books, says he's seen your name pop up on the Kindle store. So there you go. You're actually finding people there. So that's a nice thing.
Perfect.
And then from a little earlier, Andrew was popping in saying that you try to help everyone else out with the process, and so as when you build your community, they start helping you with your books too. So that's nice.
Oh yeah, no, for real.
Fantastic. But yeah, no, that's a really nice premise, and I think, well, I'm hoping that more and more authors do take advantage of the fact that characters are supposed to be real, which means you have the complexity of, yes, the external, whatever is motivating you, but there's a lot of internal things going on. And people are complex emotionally and with, our own backstories. So I really like that. And that is really neat. Where did you come up with your idea for these two and this world? Or was it the world first and then them?
Yeah.
Or was it them and the world? Okay.
Yeah, it was definitely the setting first. So, and I'm very much an idea writer. So I like to like see what I don't know. I write down ideas and just say, here's a cool setting, and I'll write that down, and then I'll just base the whole story off of that. So I have ideas for setting and I have ideas for characters, and I like to kind of meld the two together, right? So setting in this case was the first idea that I had, and I just kind of like I heard this term for how the moon is kind of always facing the planet,
Yes.
right? And it's the same face of the planet's always facing it. So, or the same face of the moon is always facing the planet. So we never see the dark side of the moon, right? So that phenomenon is called tidal locking, where one celestial body becomes locked to another, and it's always facing that same side of it. Okay, so I was like, well, what if that happened with the planet to the sun? Was the premise, right? And if that kind of thing happened, you would have this kind of like, one side of the planet would be in the sun all the time, and the other side of the planet would be in the shade, right? So so I was like, okay, let's start with that, and then kind of see how it works. And then as I dived into I just kind of started writing the story, and as I explored it a little more, I was like, oh man, it's actually really complicated, because that type of setting is like totally crazy. Like it would actually be, first of all, when it would first stop, everything would pretty much die. So, and the whole planet would be like ripped apart. So, like the whole surface of the planet would pretty much rip apart. So I was like, okay, that's kind of crazy. So there has to be some way for things to like survive all that. So I had to like go back and like look at some more science and be like, okay, what kind of conditions would it need to be in order for things to survive? And so I had to like make sure that it fit all those conditions really well scientifically, because I don't know, I like my stuff to make sense, with a twist of magic in the back to kind of help some stuff, right?
Some people were saying, I don't know if yours really falls in, because I don't know the parameters of the subgenre, but science fantasy, where you do pull in a lot of, real explanations of the what and the why with your fantasy. And I don't know if yours falls into that category, but I know that is a genre or subgenre.
Not really. I like to take that as like a premise for it. And after I wrote that book, actually, I learned that, what is it? The Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson. He did something like that too, where there's some kind of weird setting for the planet, and that's why it is the way it is, like all the land masses together in one spot or something like that. It had to do with like, I can't remember what it was called, but just like the type of planet that it was. So just like that idea of like having a cool type of planet is, I don't know, something people do. And then everything doesn't have to make scientific sense, but some of it does to me. Like I want it to be like, hey, it's rooted in science, okay? So like some of this should make sense, but not all of it does, and that's okay. I'm there for entertainment, and like we can do hypotheticals, and there are actually some sci-fi type books that are based on a planet like that too. So there are some books out there that do that kind of thing, but none of it's in fantasy. So I thought that was kind of cool. So, but that's kind of like some setting stuff that I do for it. But and then the inspiration for the characters is, it's kind of the same. What I look at is I'm like, what type of character do I want in this story? And I'll kind of think about like, well, what's the premise? So I'll think of a plot before I think of a character. And then I'll think like, what kind of characters are in this main obstacle? So I'll think of like, what's the main obstacle they're going to overcome? And then how does the character kind of fit into that? What kind of person would they be? And I'll just kind of answer some questions. I basically just have a sheet that I'll go and like fill in like answers to, basically. And that's how I create characters for them, just so that they become more dynamic. And then, so I do the setting first because I want the setting to influence the type of person that they are a lot as well. So I'm going to know what kind of magic is in existence, or what kind of weather they experience and stuff like that. So, hey, Paula. So, so I like to do all of that and then establish the character, because I like to make it so that the character fits into wherever I'm throwing them, basically. So unless it's like, hey, they're on Earth, and then I'm throwing them into some new planet, then that's a little different, I guess. But yeah.
I feel like you could have, I don't know if you have I'm trying to remember if you have an author website.
I do, but it's like, don't bother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, it's like,
if you got really into it, I could almost see like a page or something talking about where your inspirations come from and this, anything that has basis on science, here's a little bit of like the terminology and all that stuff. And that would be kind of cool, I think, to find out where the author kind of the ideas come from. And
It's not a bad idea. Because I mean, that's like one of my big things too, is I like to have really cool ideas and go off of that. So, I mean, having something like that on there would be a good way to connect with those type of readers too.
sorry,
So,
I had a couple phone calls come in, so I was like, turn it off, turn
yeah.
it off.
Yeah.
But no, that I don't know. I think that's neat. I love seeing like the bonus material from authors in different ways. For instance, I mean, we all have probably have heard of Tolkien, and he was very language based, and so he wanted to create a language, and then he needed a setting for the language, and so he came up with creatures and cultures, and then all of a sudden he had so many, he was like, I need to write a story with it so I can set my language and root it in a story, and it was that way of like approaching a story, which is very different but really kind of cool. So having someone utilize science and then find ways to then create, your ecosystems, your world design, and go from there. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, that is actually cool. Yeah. The idea is,
So, so with your series coming, you're working your way through your second book. You have your first one out. Do you have any clue of how long the series is going to be, or is this something you're just going to continue to develop as you go? I'm a person who, when I write a series, I pretty much know how long it's going to be because I know where it's ending and I kind of have that already set up. But there are plenty of authors who are just like, I'll figure it out when it's time. I'll know.
yeah, absolutely. I planned it all out as a trilogy, and I kind of had the idea for all three of the books like in place already. So I'm pretty well established. I did recently adjust like probably some plot points along the line where things are going to happen, and I threw in some things to add different content. So it's molded a little bit since I originally like wrote the first book and kind of mapped out the next two, and then I wrote a prequel, right? So I did that. That wasn't part of the plan at all,
Yeah.
and that kind of like threw me off on like it gave me a lot more ideas for stuff. And some of the people who read the prequel already, they're like, "Man, that's a really good prequel. Like you could do a lot more with that."
Mhm.
Like back in the day, because basically the premise for the prequel is um it's like 600 years prior, so it's like way before the original story, but
Yeah.
it's about that moment when the planet does stop spinning and like what happens. So I went into that whole thing, and it answers a lot of the questions about how the world is and like the magic and stuff like that, because the setting that you have, 600 years after that is kind of different, and like the magic the shamans are using is different than what they were doing way back when. And so you can kind of see this evolution that occurred with it. So I'm like, yeah, that is really cool. Like, I think it is awesome that you get a chance to see how things could have been, because it's so much more deep than, some people thought. And also some people who read the first book, they've also been like, man, I wish we had more magic. I wish we had more about the history and stuff like that. I was like, well, let me just give you a prequel for that, right? So that was part of the idea. So I mean, I could totally see myself doing a whole spin-off for that. And I've thought about the idea of doing spin-offs of it.
Mhm.
But again, the idea is that I think if that series does well, then yeah, why not? If it doesn't do extremely well, that's okay. I'm just going to do the next book, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's kind of what happens most of the time is if it does well, then yeah, I can always make more content for it, right? I think that's why it's important that you establish a good setting and a good history and all that kind of stuff, so that you have more content you can create if you want to. So, and I feel like I could go on it if I want to, but we'll see. I've already got another book written from a different series that I'm doing, so I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't have to. There's nothing pressing, and I know that one's going to be, it's going to sell well. So I already know. But
Hey,
in
that.
all reality, I didn't know, but I wrote the other book not knowing what fantasy romance was, and then I
Mhm.
joined Book Talk,
Oh.
and I joined Book Talk in like July of last year or something, and all the posts I see are about all this romance stuff, and I
Romantic,
was like, oh man,
fantasy,
there's a lot of that.
romantic.
And then I saw a video the other day that was like, what qualifies something as fantasy romance? And I was like, oh, I check all those boxes with that book. Like that's a straight up fantasy romance. Like the whole premise of it is like, are they going to be together, or
Yep.
like and then them coming together and is what solves the problems and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, shoot, I didn't realize that. But I'm also a dude, so it's like, I don't know, marketing fantasy romance as a dude is probably not. I don't know. We'll see.
You could come up with a pen name where you don't have to have a first name, just have a couple initials and a last name, and no one has to know, why.
It's,
Why
it's
why judge a
possible.
book by the writer? Judge a book about the content within. So,
Sure,
and
I'm not. It
I
is
have a
possible, but
comment.
also I think I want to create like a good author brand because
Oh yeah.
it still fits in my author brand, like just
Okay, good.
fine, right? Boys and girls can read it, and it's good quality content. And again, I focus on like clean fantasy, so I want fantasy that's like not explicit in certain ways, right? So literally no swearing and no sex and stuff like that is kind of what I've done. And so I'm like, yeah, I want that brand to be well established is the idea. So it still falls in line with all of that. I'm just, I'm curious to see how it'll go if I market certain tropes as a dude, but we'll see. So
Hey, you'll be the experimenter. I know. I'm sure there are others out there, and I'll kind of comment
there
saying you
really
need
are though.
you need
There
the
actually are
romance.
quite a bit, but yeah. So I don't know, but we'll see how it goes. I did one video on it just as a teaser to see how it would do, and it was like it did like it was just my first video about it. It got like 8,000 views, which again, it's not like incredibly a ton, but 8,000 views for like a book promo
Yeah.
video that this was one scene. I was like, that's a little weird. But then again, since then, I've seen a lot of videos that are very romance focused and where they will get significantly more views than that. So, yeah. But
You
anyway,
never know.
yeah, we'll
You
see.
could start out and have 8,000. The next one you post, you could have 300,000, and then you go back and it's 8,000 again. You never know. I feel like I could never figure out the algorithm, but that's okay. Now, I love the fact that you write clean fantasy because, like, one of my series, my Portal Fantasy, is a clean fantasy,
Right.
and it's just something it's nice to offer because, like you said, it allows it to be approachable to a wider audience
Right.
because they're even, it's not just talking about kids to adults, but also there are definitely certain adults that aren't comfortable with some of the heavier, spicier stuff, but still want to enjoy the sweeping fantasy. So having other authors in that genre, it's nice. But yeah, my way I break out things is I have different ages: young adult, new adult, adult. I have clean fantasy, and then some of the darker fantasy sides, just because they are a little more grittier versus because I don't qualify myself as a romance writer,
Mm.
but kind of like what you're saying with your first series, you're going to have romantic elements in your books. Regardless,
Yeah, me
they're going to be
personally,
there.
anyway.
But they may not be the main theme, the getting together may not be the main theme, which would break you into a type of fantasy, a cozy fantasy. Who knows? A cozy romance fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what you want.
Yeah.
So with your books, it sounds like you're one of those authors who right now, especially since you're coming in swinging hard, and you have a lot of stories kind of forming in the back of your head. Do you ever kind of feel those moments where you should be writing this, but you want to be writing this?
Honestly, I don't know. The thing is, I just kind of say if I want to get there, I got to finish this up.
Yes.
So I'm very much like task oriented where I'm like if I want to write that book, I need to finish this one. So I don't know. I just kind of push my way through it and then try to make the best out of it. So, and that's okay. And it's like I wish I was a little more prolific so I could get there faster. But like I don't know, life's just busy. Full-time job, three or
Oh,
two
yeah.
kids. Right? So yeah, things get busy. But I in the progress goes okay. Like I'll get there and I'll finish it up and I'll get where I want to. Just yeah, I could definitely if I could write 3 books a year, that'd be great. That's what I would want to do.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I mean, like, when I started off, I was pushing for one book a year.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that was a hard thing to do. And you get, I feel like one, you get faster, and the way your brain works is a little more in tune to your writing process. And so, be it, the actual putting words on paper gets faster, or the way your story develops gets faster as you go. So, going forward, I do think authors speed up their process to whatever extent that means. But understand, so many of us on this platform are like what you are saying. You have full-time jobs, you have children, you have your own lives. We're not always behind the computer all the
Right.
time. And nor should you be. You should enjoy life too. And so every author is going to have their speed. If it's one book a year, if it's 15, whatever works for you, that's perfectly fine. No.
Paula, I'm just saying it's a goal. Okay, three books a year is a goal. Okay, so I'm
You
usually about. I think I probably hit about two actually, but again, I've got plenty of room. I could totally do three. I just don't end up hitting it that hard. I guess that's all. So usually my writing sessions are going to range from like 500 to 1,000 words.
Yeah.
So yeah, I used to hit 2,000 a day. So like that was when I was writing this book originally. I was doing 2,000 words a day. So it was like pretty fast. And then I wrote a whole different book and then came back to this one after I did a bunch of like beta reads and stuff like that. But realized that, yeah, honestly, I learned so much after I joined Book Talk. I realized that everyone I was working with was way slow, so slow. And it was really dragging me down. And so, I don't know, like people that would beta read my books, it would take them like 4 months to do it, you know?
Wow.
And I would just be like, all right, I'm going to write a book while I'm waiting for you then. So I would just go and write a whole different book. And that's kind of what I did. And then I came into Book Talk and I was like, man, people, yeah, that's way too long. Like, and I really learned what big bookish people would really read. So, as in like they could read so many books. And I was like, yeah, I guess I haven't known a whole lot of people who read lots of books, apparently.
Well, I'm a slow reader, so I have to say, but that's also why I don't offer my skills as a beta reader, because I am a slow reader. I read my book all the time, but to read other books, I just don't have the time to do it, plus the speed is just not there. With that said, that is a good point. When people are starting the process of looking things like for alpha readers or beta readers, set a deadline and say, hey, this is what I'm expecting from you. I need you to fulfill this within this amount of time. If you can't do it, I appreciate you, but you are not right for this project because I'm trying to move things on. This is a business. This is, you're trying to reach certain goals, certain deadlines, and thankfully on, like you said, this particular app, there are so many people who read books like they blink and they're reading another book, and it's just amazing to me. So it's not necessarily hard to find when you're on apps like this, but you do need to be very straightforward and say, here's my deadline, here's my goal. You get 1 month, you get 6 weeks, you get whatever, and you're reading 90,000 words. You should be able to do it if you're actually committed to this project.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So.
But live and learn.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that I'm to the point where I don't have. I'm not doing beta swaps anymore because I'm like, yeah, that was the hard part. The hard part as well. Spending too much time reading other people's works when, honestly, like I wish I could do that, right? But again, it's just how much time do I have available, and I'm not an editor, right? So, yeah.
No, but that's why I pay someone to edit my books, is because I'm not there.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm decent, but I mean, like, it's just helpful to have, like, outside perspective that's professional on that, so.
Mm-hmm. And let me ask you, so do you have an editor, or are you one of the people, because there are some that just have a set number of beta readers, and they go through that cycle with them, and that's what they do for their editing process. So how do you go through your editing process?
I don't know what I'm going to be yet, so I'm still kind of, like, trying to figure that part of it out, because I did hire an editor for the first book, and I mean, it's obviously editing's pretty pricey, and so doing that is, I don't know, it's kind of sketchy. I think I will probably lean towards just having some beta readers catch some stuff, because I'm personally, when it comes to like grammar and stuff like that, I'm pretty good. Like I'm really good at that, so I can pick up on probably 99% of it, and then if I have other people go and read through it, then they can pick up that other 1%. Maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's 30 errors in the book, but I'm going to want to catch all 30 of them, right? So that's what the beta readers will do, is they'll pick up on those things. So that's part of what I'm, I guess, planning to have resolved through having beta readers, is just pick up on those 30 things I didn't catch when I read through it Twitter times. And then once that's all resolved, I can trust that it should be decent, right? So
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah.
idea. But the editor that I hired, she wasn't focused on stuff like that at all. It was more just um, story structure, pretty much
I got
story
you. Well, there are
structure, the
different type of
characters,
editors. Yeah.
right? So it was a developmental review is what I
I got
actually paid
you.
for. Yeah. So, which is great. I think that's the kind that I would rather pay for. I'd rather pay for a developmental review than any kind of grammar checking type stuff because again, I think most people generally have some idea of grammar, and so if you just have enough beta readers look at it, I mean, they'll probably pick up most of the stuff the editor would have done anyway. So,
And that's another good point is like there are different type of editors, and for a first time person, you're like just general searching editor, you need to first do your research and figure out what type of editor you want because there are editors that focus grammar and spelling. There are editors that are just content and like you said, developmental. There are line editors. There are just different ways people go and approach that process, and depending on what your weakest spot is, you may need something different than someone else. And so you want your bang out of the buck, and editing is pricey, and that's one of those fees that as an independent author we have to like figure out where this money is coming from when we haven't even been able to produce something yet.
exactly. Well, it's a business, right? And if you establish a business, it'll probably take. I've heard again, if you do things well, then it a lot of times takes 3 years for a business to become profitable, right? So if
Yes.
you think about that in publishing, like I'm like, well, I got one book. What does 3 years mean in publishing, right? Is that a certain number of books? Is that like just one book and wait 3 years? I mean, I don't know, right? Probably not. So it's more about how I think a lot of times it can be how prolific you are, but then also how targeted you're being with the business. So,
Oh yeah. Oh
uh,
yeah. And there, when you're Indian, you're learning your way around things and what options you have available because we do have a variety of options. You just have to figure out what works for you and what you want to, you know, choose going forward. And there's a comment from Andrew popping up here saying, yes, always have the chance that ARC readers can also catch stuff too when you get to that point. And that's true. ARC readers, for anybody who's listening, are not necessarily required to catch stuff. But I always ask my ARC readers, if you do see anything that I missed for whatever reason, please let me know before I press publish. I appreciate
mhm.
that. Extra eyes.
Yeah, I got there and I had those 20, I think it was 27 errors that I had made of some kind, and that's what all came out in my ARC reads. So, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
And guess what? There's probably one that slipped through too, because the reality is that happens even professional, trad publishing and everything. It happens. No matter how many times it happens. It's one of
I
those
sure,
things.
I sure hope I got them all, but I guess we'll find
Yeah.
out, right? Someone
Yes.
will tell me. I know they will.
Eventually, maybe. Oh man. But yeah, so let me ask you, what kind of strategy for marketing do you have or are you trying to develop? Because I know you're here and I think this is a fantastic place to, reach people. Are you trying to find people through other social media or are you exclusively through this platform? Do you run ads? What are you doing at this moment? I know you're new at you're beginning,
I
so
know.
don't
I know. I'm
don't
like, yeah, I could use some knowledge on that or some expertise. But I have been looking into like doing advertising, and I'm not sure what is valuable with that yet.
Mhm,
So I'm still observing different methods involved. Potentially just
mhm.
doing low cost, like trigger ads on something
Yep,
like Facebook or Amazon.
yep.
Um, so those are some things I've thought about. Again, I haven't pulled the trigger on any of that. So primarily, I'm just doing it through TikTok and Instagram. And it's funny, TikTok helps reach new people a lot, and I think Instagram helps with a lot of conversion to actual like sales or participants to some degree. So yeah, it's very interesting. I think you have the ability to engage with your audience
Yes.
more on Instagram and TikTok. You maybe have like a small ring of like maybe 5 to 10 people that it kind of like sticks you with, and you're kind of like stuck with those 5 to 10 people. In like the algorithm sense, it's very weird. So I'll notice that like the only videos that I see, I follow 250 people, right?
Yep.
And I only see videos from like 10 of them, right?
Yeah, it's
Or
all
something
who
like
you're
that.
engaging with. and then it'll show you
Yeah.
more of that. And I've noticed that, and that I think that is the sad thing is like I have author people and I have other people on this platform that I really want to see their content, but if I don't remember to go and then look for them periodically, they disappear.
Yeah.
And so if you're not constantly, conversing with them, it's the algorithm. They're trying to, uh, I guess, mass. I don't know. I don't know why they would do that. I feel like if you are liking content but who knows? Who knows? I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know. So, but I can tell that there's like some sort of way that you'll have it go to kind of a sort of a reach within people that you are connected with, and then um, depending on how the account's built, there are different ways. So I built other accounts on TikTok that I developed specifically for marketing, and so all that I'm going to engage with on those accounts is like specifically like marketing related things, like book talk specific, right, or like fantasy book talk or something like that. So and I won't let those accounts engage with any other content, right? Because it does group stuff. So if someone follows me or if I go and I engage in content or I watch a video that is unrelated to my book genre, right, then the content that I create and I push out on that also has the potential to be pushed out to whatever content I may have viewed,
Mhm.
which that's not, I mean, if it was like a cat video, I mean, yeah, sure, a random cat person might be interested in fantasy books, but odds are probably not, right? So it diversifies it way too much where you want to have it a little more specific, especially where you want to engage with a target audience. And so that's part of what I've been doing is like trying to mess around with some of that a little bit. And I don't know, I'm still tweaking some things, but it's not like an expansive level of research. Again, the type of videos that I would put on there, they're not the quick type videos that I'm used to doing because my
Yeah.
life's so busy. So I'm most of the time I'm just really busy, so I try to do like quick videos, as opposed to like some of them I'm trying to do like I have been trying to do some high quality, like really high quality videos. I don't have like the technology to do most of that. Like I don't have a camera. I just use my
Yeah.
phone. So
Yeah.
that limitation alone kind of like limits some of the stuff I do. And I develop everything on my phone. I don't use a computer
Mhm.
at all either. Which again, I have a lot of knowledge. If I had the technology to do it, you would see some like pretty sweet videos coming out. But you'll notice that I'll try to do one of those every once in a while, and they're okay. But it's like also that all that time and stuff that you put into it, sometimes it doesn't get the engagement that you
Yeah.
want. So anyway, it's still me just doing a gamble of trying to figure out what's worth my time because
Mhm.
um, yeah, I've created some that are high quality and don't do as well, and I've created some that are just so simple and they do okay. So
I
I
mean,
don't know.
that's the thing is, I like the idea of trying different things because
Mhm.
I know a lot of authors joke about you can spend hours or whatever a ridiculous amount of time trying to make that perfect video, and then it's like, well, it was okay, and then they do something on the fly because they get frustrated, and all of a sudden it's starting to trend, and who knows, but it's nice I think to try to produce a variety because let's be real, we get busy with our lives and we're trying our best to do the marketing and trying to do that, but sometimes for me I found out with the CapCut, and you'll see a lot of these CapCut videos, which yes, they're one of these, you fit your picture, you fit your little snippet of a video in, and it kind of formats it for you,
Mhm.
and those are easy to do in a pinch, and
Right.
people chuckle at them and they're good, but the unique ones I do think have the best potential to do big, do what you want it to do, and get that goal of a mass amount of views. So um having a little of that opportunity to have, okay, sure, I'm running short of time today, I'm going to do a quick one, that's fine, but still taking some time periodically to put something a little more is nice too, and not just pigeonhole and only do one or the other because it's hard,
Exactly.
we have lives.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's part of what I'm trying to do. So, again, I need to devote more time to it. A lot of what I'm doing right now is just trying to work on getting book two done. I want to finish the series is the idea, and I think
Yeah.
once the series is finished, I'll probably try and promote a little bit more. Um, as well as the next book and the next thing too. But I feel like people really want a series that's completed, and I know that's the way you're supposed to do it, especially as an indie, and just do like the whole rapid release type thing and all that.
I
And
can't
so,
figure that one out. I try so hard, it never, never
yeah.
rapid enough. But
So I just got too eager. So, but I mean, even though I jumped the gun, it's like it's okay, and like, um, yeah, but it's all part of like what do I have time to spend on right now, and I'll kind of work on it accordingly. But we'll see how it goes. I'm still planning on experimenting some other like higher quality video type stuff. So as I get into that, I don't know. I'll find out because I do see there are a couple creators on Book Talk that make really good like edited videos, like highly edited videos that they'll put out for Book Talk, and yeah, tons of views on those. Right, they do really well, and so it's pretty impressive. Um,
mhm.
and again, I envision a lot of different things that I could do, and I have tried to do some, but the level of response on those ones, it to some degree it's okay because it does catch like a couple like good people that are like very niche specific. And again, if your goal is, hey, I want to reach the actual fan, like who's the real person that's going to enjoy this story, and just remember like that's what I'm focusing on. So, but obviously mass quantities would be great.
Yeah,
So
well, that's
focusing on certain video editing skills and things like that to target them a little better. Yeah, we'll see. Again, I've got to look into some stuff. I think I'm going to do. Um, I don't know. There are some content creators, I guess, or what do you call them? Content creator coaches type people that I follow.
oh, okay, yeah.
That I mean, again, there's a lot of good advice in the stuff that they have, and so I want to implement some of those more,
Hmm.
if I ever get time. But it's stuff like, hey, you can make one video a week, and you could
Yep.
do just fine, right? But I'm like, yeah, but that one video, if I'm gonna spend, 6 hours making that one video, it better be dang good, and I better get instead of you know
Yeah.
500 to 1,000 views, it better get, you know, 500 to 10,000 views at least, or I mean, whatever I'm saying, to like a million. I want to get a million views, or I want to get
Yeah,
20,000 views, or
I
something
do,
like
I
that
do.
on
Yeah.
that video.
Shoot for the stars. Yes,
Yeah.
no, I know, I totally understand. And honestly, I can only recommend, I can't, everybody's different. But because you're still producing your first series and everything, if you're focusing your money on time, it probably is better suited, playing around on apps like this versus spending money on ads because ads do the best with longer series because you market the first book and you make your money off the selling of the sequels. And
Right.
so, it may, for right now, this may be like the best way to do it rather than lose a lot of money while you're trying to figure out advertising and not have a lot of products to sell. It's easier to sell 10 books to one person than one book to 10 people. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
but another thing is, and you mentioned this a little earlier, was there's a bunch of people who only will touch a book if the series is complete. And
Hmm.
so as soon as your series is done, you'll get to be able to start marketing to those people. Now, I don't think that's fair because we all have to write the books, and they're going to come out, and sometimes they do. They take years where we can't snap our fingers and wiggle our noses and they appear, but there's a bunch of people who won't get your books until the series is complete. And so for me, I only have one complete series, and that's all I can reach them. They have to
Cool.
wait. They have to wait before the others are completed because I take the time I need to develop the book the quality I need it to be. So
Oh, interesting. Okay. Hmm.
yeah. So let's see. I see a comment popping up that says I think Amazon waits till you have about 100 reviews before they push them through ads. I don't know if that's true or not. I do know algorithms change drastically on both Facebook ads and Amazon ads. And a number of years ago, I was doing well on Amazon, and then that wasn't the case anymore, and I can't figure it out ever since. And then I've done the same with Facebook, where towards the end of last year, I was doing super. It was fantastic with one of my series, and then since then, it's like crickets. So who knows? Algorithms change, and it's like anything. It's a game. and I'm tired.
There are also seasonal effects. There are seasonal effects too. Like
That's true.
people buy more books towards the end of the year, and they buy
Holiday.
fewer books. Like people don't buy as many books in spring and summer.
I know. I feel it.
Yeah, and like I
Um,
release part of it depends. That's also something you consider when you're releasing a book. Is like, okay, if I'm going to release a book, when am I going to release it, and who am I going to target? And that's part of what I was like. I kind of lost focus of my goal too because I wanted to get a bestseller list.
yeah.
And if you're an indie author, you have more capability to publish a book whenever you want. Whereas most traditional published books are going to come out like they're big ones. They're going to push those books out towards the end of the year because that's when all the book sales happen, right? So they'll publish their book in like October or September or November, right? Because then people are going to be buying books at that time. Whereas a lot of indies will say, hey, you should do a rapid release and you should release it in March or February, March, and April or something like that. And have, a trilogy come out and you're going to do 1 month after the other. And then the reason you would do that is because you're extremely likely to get a bestseller list.
Less
Because it's like
competition on
that.
the big ones, yeah.
Right. So if you want to get a bestseller list, you're going to release it at a time when all the big publishers aren't publishing their books because people that are buying books, they might buy yours more likely, right? If you're pushing your advertising for that time frame. So it depends on your goal. And that was part of my goal. I was like, yeah, I'd like to hit a bestseller list. And then I went and, screwed myself over by like doing pre-orders for my paperback, which they don't count towards the day of release. So yeah, that kind of I shot myself in the foot there. So, but again, it depends on what you do. But I kind of that's again part of the learning curve of like figuring out like, hey, when are things supposed to happen, and then like getting different feedback from different sources, and that's kind of what messed that whole approach up. Again, I think it's okay. I can still get good sales and do things like that, but part of the if part of my goal was to be on a best-selling list, then I had all the knowledge and then made the wrong choice basically. So
Again, it all depends on what your goals are because
right.
it's nice to have those little USA Today, bestseller and things because once you get it from one book, you can call yourself that USA Today bestselling author forever because you've done it. You've made that goal. So it depends if you want that, that tag, which people, perk up their eyes and be like, whoa, what's that? On the other hand, the strategy behind doing pre-orders, especially longer term pre-orders, is because as you're writing the book and as you're building the buzz, people will be like, oh yeah, I want to buy the book. And you're like, hey, well, you can get the pre-order right now so you don't forget it. Because they're going to be
Exactly.
like, oh, I'm going to come back to that. And then you lose, they never do. And you lose that opportunity for a sale. So, it all depends on what you want out of the
Mhm.
stuff. And there's a lot of strategy. Like you said, it's a business and there's a lot of strategy behind it.
Yeah, and you learn as you go, so
Yep,
it's all good. But
absolutely. Well, we're rounding the end of the hour, and I know we talked about which kind of talked a little earlier than I usually ask, but you're here, you're on Instagram. Um, do you have a link tree correct on your
I do.
yes? And so where would you prefer people to follow you? Do you have a preference or do you care? Do you have like an order? Because some people are like, I'm always on this platform. This is where you want to come and hang out. Or do you like follow me everywhere?
So, I mean, obviously, the number one place that's most valuable is a newsletter. So,
Yeah.
social medias are only as reliable as what the content decides to push out to you.
Mhm.
Whereas if you join a newsletter, then I mean, you're always going to get the stuff. Like you're going to see everything that I ever make, right? So that's the idea. So I'd always say newsletter is the most valuable. I mean, follows and likes and all that stuff are fairly insignificant in comparison. So that's what I'd always say.
And your newsletter is on your link tree so people can follow that.
Yeah.
Subscribe,
Yep.
technically, I think. And
Yeah.
yes, I see a comment that's saying, yes, for books and a lot of things in general, it's not just books, it's for sales. Usually people need that
Mhm.
5 to 7 times, interaction, seeing something in front of their face before they are more likely to purchase whatever that is. And that is kind of a rule of thumb for just general sales. So I understand that. But yeah, so newsletters there. If anybody wants to follow him, it's on his. It's also on mine because I do have that as well. But let me ask you, because like I said, we're running the end of the hour. Is there anything you want to talk about? Maybe about your books, topic that we haven't covered, a question we haven't, you have that we haven't, touched base on? Let me know.
Oh no, I think we're good. Yeah, we can wrap it up there.
Okay, well, thank you for coming out and hanging out today. And I repurpose these little sessions on my YouTube, and at that point, I'll add all your links below so people can continue to find you and follow you going forward. And at any time you ever want to do one of these down the line, just let me know. Like I said, I try to keep them pretty chill.
Sure. Awesome.
Yeah. And have a fantastic rest of your evening since you are
Thanks, you
in
as well.
Mountain Time Zone.
Yeah. Good night.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for following.